us. So welcome everybody. Thanks so much for making it. Congratulations on getting here to week 4. Week 4, go to training. I know everyone's excited. I hope everybody's had a pretty good week and has enjoyed the class so far. Well, I guess a good month really. This class is a lot of fun. I think week 4 we have some really fun ways of wrapping up the month, going over everything. So I'm glad for everyone who's able to be here live. It's always awesome when I have a live audience. But yeah, I'll just dive right into it. We're going to talk a little bit today about career research, obviously. We're also going to talk about stress and kind of managing that into career longevity. I imagine everyone's probably done some work over in leading up to this point. You've thought, here's what I want to do. Here's who I want to be working with. And I encourage everyone. There's a phrase that sticks out to me that I'm thinking of. It's begin with the end in mind. Kind of having our goals laid out for us at the beginning of a journey is a great way to start it. And it doesn't mean we're going to necessarily get to that goal. It doesn't mean our goals won't change. But having direction, I think, is really important. And I think it's important, in education, but also in your careers. We might do exactly what we think we're going to do, and we might do something that's totally crazy, way different than what we had originally thought of. But as long as we're moving forward and moving towards the goal, I think that's really what makes people successful. So enough of my musings. We'll get into it. What are some of the things that you all have thought about that guide you, that direct you, that lead you to a goal? What are your core values? What are the driving factors in your life that make you get up out of bed, that make you go live the way that you live, work the way that you work, interact the way that you interact? What are some of those things? And I realize it's a lot to reach your dreams and goals. That's awesome. I'm happy if anyone wants to talk. There's a hand raising button. You can raise your hand and I can unmute you. I keep everyone muted just so we don't have all the background noise. But yeah, okay, Mel is helping others. Awesome. That's a great one. I think that's what drove me a lot into my education and social work, and then my work as an instructor. What else? Does anyone have anything else that they're thinking of? Anything that stands out to them? I'm sure inevitably, as soon as I there we go, to have success in life. Okay, yeah, that's a big one. Scroll down. There's kind of go through some of the things that we look at, and I want everyone to think about that. What's driving you as we move through. Here are some of the things we're going to cover in our lecture. We're going to talk about why, and I'm sure everyone has probably seen this either in creative presentation or earlier. I go over it again because I think it's really fun. I really like Simon Sinek. I think he's a really interesting person. He does a lot of really good work. We're going to look at some companies that are doing interesting, kind of playful work. Who kind of blending, merging the lines between play and work, and they get really interesting results. Which is the spoiler of it all. they have an unorthodox way of getting work done, and they do really incredible work as a result. So kind of breaking the molds of what we maybe thought of. And I think this class, my hope for all of you is that this class has that effect. I realize we, a lot of times life up till now, education to this point has probably, at least for most of you, if you've been educated in the American education system, has looked one very specific way. And I think that coming in here, there's some different ideas that we like to emphasize. Balance is a big one. But right, companies that are incorporating a more balanced structure to how they get things done seem to be getting pretty interesting results. We're going to talk about, kind of go over the work, play, fit, push model, which we've been going over this month. We've all been doing that. And if you have any questions about assignments, we'll definitely talk about those at some point, when at the end of the lecture. So if you have questions, we want to save them, write them down, keep them. I'll happily answer questions. So go over the golden circle. I think everyone, like I said, has probably seen this. I have the video in the materials section. I want to take just a couple of minutes just to go through it again. It's Simon Sinek Golden Circle. If you'll click on that, we'll watch through that together, and I will jump back in as soon as we're done. Alrighty, I think everyone's probably coming back. We're close to the end of that video. So if you're finishing up, cool. So again, I think that kind of examining things through that perspective really just kind of breaks down the way that people think about you, think about the work that you're doing. It breaks the mold. If you've all heard, or you will if you haven't heard it yet. People talk about their elevator pitches, and people are always pitching something. They've got a product, a thing, themselves, something that they want other people to invest in, buy, put their name with, and make that association. And everyone kind of has this formula that they use, and it sounds right. It's we're great, we do this thing, but starting with why really gives you I don't want to say an advantage, because I don't know that that's necessarily the case, but it gives you a break. You've broken the mold of how someone's used to hearing something, how they're used to being communicated with. And they kind of look at you and they say, hey, this seems different. This sounds different. What's going on here? And having someone's interest and attention is probably one of the best things you can actually get. So I'd encourage everyone to kind of just keep that in the back of your head. You don't need to, um, sit and explain your why every time you meet someone new. But if you can do that in terms of your goals, why you're doing what you're doing, how you're setting yourself apart. I think about that for myself. Why am I here? I love seeing people's lives transformed. That's what took me down my educational path into social work. I loved seeing people get from one place to another and be in a better place at the end of it. I love seeing people succeed in life, and I love knowing that I was able to pave a path for them, build a bridge for them, do something like that. That's who I am at my heart. That's what I really care about. It also happens to be that, I have this education and this skill set and, presentation skills and all these other things that, make me a decent candidate for, the positions that I've held. But what I actually care about is people. At the end of the day, that's what's important to me. And if I can communicate that, I have people's attention. No, everyone's going to walk out of Full Sail on graduation day with a piece of paper that says, I have this skill set. And everyone on the stage is going to have the same piece of paper that says, I have this skill set. And when you get to an employer, when you get to, a company, you get to an investors meeting, whatever it is, they're all going to say, okay, well, we get it. But everyone else has the same piece of paper. What else do you bring to the table? Who are you? Why are you different? Why should we work with you? Well, what's important for us to know about you? It's kind of in a lot of professional circles, people will get resumes and they'll see a GPA on a resume, and very seldom do people keep their GPA on their resume for very long after they've gotten into the professional world. And basically, I've yet to meet an employer who asked me or cared what my GPA was when I finished school. They said, well, you finished the program, blah, blah, blah. Tell me more about you. Because that's what people really want. They're buying me. They're not buying my education. Just kind of something to think about, to kick around, to have in the back of your head. I'd encourage people to kind of, take that perspective. Right. The whole starting with why, if I can get my interest in people, in transformation, in developing people, if I can communicate that to people, people feel comfortable with me. My hope is that when I have students, they feel comfortable working with me. And that's really what I'd want and look for, in people I'm working with. Simon Sinek does a really good job in his talk on why good leaders make you feel safe. I'm going to go back into materials. Sorry for the kind of the breakups. I know we go back and forth a few times with these, but we're going to watch that video. I want to say it's in there under the materials. It says good leaders. So I'm gonna go into that. It's a little bit of a longer video, but I will come back after we're done. So let's check that out.
Hello.
Hey everybody, coming back from that, I really like that video. I think it's a really interesting way to look at things, and I think everyone's probably probably had varied experiences when it comes to leadership in the workplace. I think that everyone's probably been under, everyone's probably seen, at least whether or not you've been under it, an example of leadership that maybe you didn't love, you weren't totally, you didn't think that was a great idea. And hopefully some of you have been or will be in organizations that have great leaders. I've had both experiences, and I can tell you that I very much prefer, the one where leaders are there looking out for, for their team, for their people, for the people who work with them, work under them. It's really a night and day difference. So I would encourage everyone to really think about that when you're looking at companies, when you're welcome Matthew. Think about the kind of leader that you would want to be and that you would want to work with. It really can be, it can be a night and day difference. It can be the difference between loving going into work every day and dreading going into work every day. And I don't think that we necessarily put a lot of thought into that. I think a lot of times, we think about jobs. We think about, well, what do I want to do and how much money am I going to get paid? which is fine. Those are reasonable things to think about. I think it's really important to think about, right, who are you going to work with? Who are the leaders you're going to work under? Are these people, how are these people motivated? I know last week, it was last week or perhaps the week before, it was last week, we went through the candle problem and we talked about motivation, and we looked at, how we're all motivated. Are we motivated intrinsically or extrinsically? What's driving us to do the things that we do? And I think that those are important things to think about in the organizations that we work within. Do these, do the organizations put, people ahead of profits, or is it the other way around? And it's interesting. I the furlough program that they talk about in this. That Simon Sinek talks about when the company needs to make money. I've seen people who are willing to make those type of sacrifices, to avoid having people get laid off and things like that. Not everyone is willing to, but a lot of times people are saying, hey, I'd rather we all suffer a little bit than any one person really has to take a giant hit. And I think that you'll see that in cultures and in organizations, and hopefully, you're all in positions where you end up in those type of organizations, or you are those type of leaders. Does anyone have anything that they want to add to that? I'm sorry, this is just me rambling on now. I really like this video. Feel free to jump in the chat box. If anyone wants to actually voice talk, you can just raise your hand. There's a hand raise button. Jamal, I just saw your hand go up. Did you have something you wanted to add? It looks like your microphone might not be working. Or you may have muted yourself. Anyone? I'm checking again for hands. If anyone has anything that they want to add. If you do, feel free, jump in, raise your hand, jump in the chat box if you want. I'm always interested to hear what everybody else thinks. Has anyone had really great, leadership that they've experienced? I don't consider myself a leader, more of a team player. Feels like if I'm a leader, I'm automatically pushy. Yeah, no, I mean, I can get, kind of the ideas that we have around that. And no need to apologize if you've had bad experiences with leaders. That's definitely it's something that happens sometimes. No worries if you have technical difficulties. I'm not. That's fine. Say I mostly strategized for a team, but I never took leadership. Okay. I think everyone probably has had some sort of role where right, maybe you get to strategize with a team, you get to work on a team. Something like that. And right, some people are a little bit, sometimes the official titles are, I don't want to say intimidating, but we're put off by that. It's understandable. I think a lot of people maybe have made bad associations with leaders, or they think, oh, what does it mean to be a boss, or to be a captain of a team, or to run something? And I I think that it's worth taking the time to say, hey, you know what? What type of leader would I like to have in my life? And then being that type of leader with other people. I have those opportunities, each month, I lead a class, and it's like, okay, well, how am I going to lead this class? And, it's a slightly different structure because, there's a different power dynamic. But at the end of the day, it's like, all right, well, I want my classes to be successful. I want them to be, happy. I want them to get the information that they're promised. I want them to, have a successful month. So it's important. Say I used to work at laser tag. The bosses were terrible, and the supervisors were very supportive and helpful. Well, that's good. I'm glad you had good supervisors. I feel like working at laser tag would be fun. That seems like it could be enjoyable. But I think it's good though. I think everyone has seen someone who they say, "Hey, this is the type of leader that I want to be. This is what I'd like to do." I'm sure the kids playing laser tag could be a challenge, definitely. So right, just think about these things. When with in terms of leadership, how do you want to lead a group? How do you want to lead teams that you're on? Mel says, if you're having a bad time with a boss, sometimes put yourself in their shoes and try to see things from their eyes, and sometimes it'll make it more tolerable. Totally, yeah, no, that's absolutely a thing. Richard Branson has this quote that we go through. It says, "You can't fake personality, passion, or purpose." I think that's true, and I think it shows up a lot when we think about how we want to be, what's important, and what matters to us. It's absolutely that way. Matthew says, not really in regards to work. I've learned from the lack of professionalism and lack of motivation by management at your last job, how not to lead or manage. You know what? I think right there, this is a great point. Sometimes the what you learn is how not to do things. Sometimes if you're learning from somebody else's mistakes, I'm sorry that you have to go through that and have to see them, but that's wisdom. The difference between knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge is knowing what is, and wisdom is being able to apply it. So if you're able to pick up on, you see somebody else make mistakes and then say, hey, I'm going to make a note of these things. This isn't how I want to lead a team. I want to lead a team differently. That's really important. It's probably a harder learned lesson, but it's probably a more valuable lesson, and it's probably one that'll stick with you a little bit longer. I think everyone's probably had something they say, oh man, I definitely don't want to do this thing. And those things tend to stick with us. So, while it's not the most fun lesson to learn, it's likely something that's really going to stick with us. We were talking about it at the beginning, and it says, knowing our core leads us to our careers. So again, kind of revisiting that. What are the core values? And we go through. We have like a list that, excuse me, I think is helpful sometimes for identification purposes. But I think about me and what's important. My two big ones that come up that happen to be on the list are integrity and authenticity. And what I mean by that is, I think it's really important to be of my word. If I say I'm going to do something, I do my best to do it. I want to follow through with the expectations that I set for people. If I tell someone, hey, I'm going to be here, I'll do this thing, I want to make sure that I'm there and that I'm doing it. And if for any reason I'm not able to do it, not able to follow through with that, I want to make sure that, I can either get that covered or, kind of go to the person and say, hey, I had this, kind of unforeseeable circumstances come up, and it's really out of my hands. But I'm going to do my best. There was a time in my life when I didn't want to get out of bed was a reason to, not go into work. And that didn't work out well for me. I didn't like the results that I got in life at that point. And what I realized is that, if I wanted to have different results, I had to start having different inputs. So I did. So I changed the way I lived, and that kind of worked out. Authenticity, the other side of that is again, just being myself. I'm okay with who I am. I don't think, I don't have to put on a show for people. It somehow has gotten easier now as a parent. I can blame it on dad jokes or just having kids, or it's much easier to just say, oh well, I'm a dad and I've got dad jokes, and it's a lot more socially acceptable to to be nerdy and to maybe like things that aren't cool. But I'm okay with it. Yeah. I've talked about this before. It's most of my spare time, not taking care of kids or working, is spent with my in my garden. I keep a lot of rare fruit trees. I'm really into it way more than is normal. But it's like I really like it. It works out well for me. It's it's my thing. It makes me happy. And I'm just okay with that. I don't need to, yeah, it's fun. And what I've realized, I think when I was a kid, I remember, I had this, guy I went to school with, and his dad owned a plant nursery, and he kept exotic flowers and stuff. And I remember giving this kid a hard time, and I was like, oh, you're into flowers and that's stupid. Because I was a dumb kid and I was a little boy, and I was like, that's not a boy thing to do. And I went back to him as an adult. This is from middle school, but I went back to him as an adult, and I said, hey, I'm real sorry for having, been a jerk to you when we were kids. I really like plants now. I totally get why you thought it was so cool when we were kids. But again, it's just being okay with who we are. It's important, and it's not always easy to do. And sometimes it takes, going through one or two uncomfortable, awkward conversations to say, hey, this is who I am. This is what I like. This is what I'm into. This is me. So I think it's worth it to, take the time and be yourself. I'm sorry, before I move on, does anything on this list resonate with any of you? Are there any of the core values that you really feel like, yeah, this is what's driving me kind of day in and day out? I'm sure that there are things that are driving you. You don't have to necessarily share them if you don't want to. You can raise your hand if you want to talk. Type in the chat box if that's more your speed. Well, if you feel like jumping back in on that topic, I'm happy to hear from you on it. As we move forward, we talk about some of the companies who are doing different things to incorporate fun. Arnell, you say playing games, you feel like is one of your core values? Do you want to explain how that relates? No, okay. Yeah. Feel free. I'm happy. You can explain it. If you want, I can unmute you. Are you there, Arnell? I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Apologies if I'm not.
Hello?
Hey, yeah, there we go. We got you.
Hello?
Yeah, you're on. What's up?
Can you hear me?
I can,
I
yes.
can't hear you now.
I can.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, now I can hear you. Yeah. Well, me playing games has been like one of my core values because I've grown up just playing games, and so a lot of people have judged me for it. Like you got to do better stuff. You have to what are like probably be a lawyer or something. They wanted me to be something big, but then again, it's not something I was very interested in. And so I was majoring in culinary arts, but then I shifted from that because it wasn't really something I really wanted to do. And so yeah, I went to game design, and now every time whoever judged me about it, I just tell them, well, that's me. If you have a problem with that, then you're gonna have to deal with it on your own because that's something I want to do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's great though that you're able to kind of get there and figure out, hey, this is what's important to me. This is what matters. I want to give everybody just a real quick heads up. We're having pretty severe weather here in Orlando at our offices. So if I drop off, it's just because we have bad weather. So just giving everybody a heads up. I don't want anyone to worry, but I think our building has lost power, so it wouldn't surprise me if we had some issues. So just a heads up. Wanted to keep everybody in the loop. So here we go. We've got some companies that are incorporating fun into what they do. We look at this and we can think about who's doing things differently. The companies that we pick on are Zappos, Google, and Pixar, and I think they all have kind of an interesting way of doing things. I'll kind of scroll down and we go through. Zappos is a shoe company. Maybe people have heard of it, maybe they haven't. Pixar, I'm sure everyone's heard of it. Cars, just kind of their big franchises. But that's one of the things. And then Google as well. Everyone, I feel like Google's one of those ones that pretty much everyone is aware of, knows about, so on and so forth. And right, the question that we pose is, what are they doing differently? Is it that is it because they hire employees who potentially wouldn't do well in a formal setting? And I think that's like an interesting question to pose because we can say, hey, are these people who wouldn't normally do well? Is this are the students that we attract here at Full Sail the type of students maybe who are non-traditional? Maybe this isn't where we would typically feed from a standard traditional regular education system. We kind of get a non-traditional student, so non-traditional employers are probably going to be looking for students who are following a similar trajectory. So Google goes through a few things. They want to create the happiest, most productive workplace in the world. They seem to do a pretty good job keeping people happy. They want to push traditional workplace boundaries, which again makes sense. Seems like a pretty solid idea. And they want employees to be able to design their own workplaces, which I think is a pretty good idea. Matt says it caters to millennium. What do you mean by that, Matthew? Do you want to elaborate? Yeah, I'm coming to you. All right, you're unmuted. Oh, is your microphone turned off? It looks like you're self-muted. Oh, there you go. You're back on. Yep.
Okay. No, that wasn't supposed to send. No, I feel like the company's doing that, like because you said if they wouldn't like thrive in another, work environment.
Yeah.
Or something like that. No, I believe it's this millennial thing, but that's the future. The millennials are the future. They're the ones that are doing all this technology and jobs and all this stuff. I think doing it that way and having fun and it's catering to that as well.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think that it's a generation who grew up and maybe has different ideas about what work should look like and what school should look like, and they want to blend, fun and social interaction and work all together.
And this technology is driving us that way with networking and social media and everything.
Absolutely,
It's
yeah,
geared that way, and that's how everybody communicates. And so why not do business that way too?
absolutely, yeah. No, I think that you're very much, yeah. It very much caters to right to the millennial ideologies around doing stuff. Yeah, 100%. I agree. Thanks for sharing
Yep.
that.
Hey, not a problem.
So yeah, so I think that's a pretty interesting perspective. There's a quick video on Google Offices that we have. It just says it's called Google Offices. So if you want to go watch that real quick, we'll watch it, and I'll come back after. Alrighty. So I think everyone's probably coming back more or less from that video. I think it's interesting. Yeah, no, I think I think Google does a lot of really interesting stuff. Right, being able to bring your dog to work. They feed their employees. Effectively 3 meals a day, but kind of there's always food there. They make it readily available for people. So I think they do a pretty good job at keeping people happy. Excuse me. It's not in their New York offices, but I know in their Mountain View offices in California, Google has garden spaces, and they have, I want to say it's like of like sports fields, things like that, which they kind of have just made those decisions to say, hey, you know what, we want people to have fun, we want people to enjoy their time here. And we realize that if we can give them fun, give them play, give them something that they like, they're going to be happier. And if they're happier, they're more productive. And if they're more productive, at the end of the day, they make more money. As a company, the company does better when they keep people happy. And it's this paradox that people seem to not always get. It's really, it's kind of counter to a lot of the ideas we've normally had. Pretty much they're saying moving to Google. I mean, at a certain point, they want people, right, to I think look at their offices as an extension of the rest of their lives. Yeah. Yeah, and right. I'm sure that once people do start working there, they probably don't go very far. Yeah, no, because why not? I mean, if you have someone who, really you feel values your time and what you're doing, it would make sense that people would want to stay there. Um, but right, a lot of the old mentalities were, this kind of yell at people, tell them to work harder, tell them to work faster, those types of ideas, which just really didn't seem to to get results in higher level functioning. We went through that with the candle problem and stress and how those things are related, and you can't intimidate someone or scare someone or threaten someone into doing better, more creative work. It's just not going to work that way. But if you give someone the freedom and the opportunities to do what they want to do, with a mind also on productiveness, they're going to eventually do pretty impressive work. It might not be on an exact timeline, and I'm sure that some things very much need to be on a timeline. But right, it seems like they do a pretty good job with getting done what they need to. Hey, to me, if you got good food, let me play games in my own time in a comfortable bed. You have me there for life. Yeah, no, that's definitely, I think, probably one of the ideas that they're really trying to work as. They want to keep people around. They want to retain their best and brightest. As a result, Google has a pretty long list of candidates who are looking for jobs there. So people are pretty regularly trying to get into that. And if you're looking to attract the best and the brightest, there's certain things you're going to have to do to make that happen. I think they're doing a pretty good job at it. Zappos has a really interesting, kind of formula, the way that they do things. They have, big parties, things like that. They want people to, they want people to buy into the, the community, the mentality, the culture of the company. So they do a pretty good job working at that. Mel says you can also rest better at night if you have a good place to work. It helps performance. Yeah, no, 100%. It definitely helps performance if you're happy, well rested, feeling good about things, not stressed. Absolutely. So, right, company culture, I think, is what Zappos does really well. They say, hey, we want people to be happy. We want you to have fun. We want there to be this, kind of, we're selling shoes. So there's only so much. There's not necessarily, there's probably less in the innovations that people can do, but they'll actually pay people at their, kind of at their 90-day assessment. They'll pay them $3,000. Say, hey, if you want to leave, you can just have $3,000 and we'll part ways and we'll see you later. It says it's also the work ethic had faded, and if employees do not feel like they're at work, I think people probably don't feel like they're at work as much. Oh, I got you. You think they'll work harder if they don't feel like they're at work? I think that there's probably something to that. I think that the issue is the relationship between it's really a conversation from the candle problem, where you go through afterwards and you say, okay, look, if you're doing mechanical tasks, then intimidation, yelling, more money, extrinsic motivators work very effectively. But if your task is not mechanical and it requires higher order thinking, problem solving, processing, things like that, then then intrinsic motivators are what work. So, again, having people feel happier, more comfortable, more content, giving them a personal challenge that is important for them to solve as a person, and not because it's a task that you as a company need them to solve. I definitely think they're motivated in a different way. I think people feel like they feel buy-in with a company. You say, hey, this company really treats me well, takes care of me, makes me feel valued. I want to do great stuff for them. And you kind of foster that relationship with people as a company, and it's hard to do because you're a giant company. But right, you want to do that. You want to foster a relationship with them. When you say, hey, look, we really care about you as a person, as an individual, above and beyond your ability to get stuff done for us. We care about you, and we want your life to be good. We want you to be happy. And as a result, I think people care a lot more about the work they do for companies. So, that might be a little bit more touchy-feely than people want out of their employer. And for those people, I think there's probably a middle of the road solution that's there. So, something to think about. Right, like I was saying, Zappos does a pretty good job. They'll pay people. If you want to leave after 90 days, they'll cut you a check and say, all right, have a good one. If this isn't going to fit, if this isn't going to be good for you, they don't want people to stick around who aren't interested and invested in their culture. Pixar does a pretty good job as well. They've got pretty awesome office spaces that they work with, and I think that they really want people. Again, they want them to be happy. They want them to be creative, which is important. I think that especially when you're making entertainment, you're doing animation, you need creative people. You need people who not just can tell a story, but who can troubleshoot an animation character rigging system. There's certain things that you just kind of need to be able to work through. That right are a lot of trial and error and problem solving, and it's not always easy and fun. But it's important that people are doing the work. So we'll go again back to the video. It's in materials, it says Pixar Studio, and we'll come back after that. All right, so I think everyone's probably coming back from that video, more or less. I think Pixar does a pretty good job. Kind of looking at innovation, looking at ways to incorporate new things. I think that a lot of times, I like the part where they talk about kind of doing the first where the Wild Things Are animation. And people, kind of the ideas of the old way of doing things, where it says, well, if it's not going to say, unless it's going to save us money, we're not doing this, or unless it makes business sense, we're not going to do this. And it's breaking those molds. That seems to be what really holds people in place, is the idea that, we're only going to do this if, we're only going to, make changes if, we have, enough of a financial incentive, instead of, pursuing things because we're passionate about them, because we care, because we want to see development, change, and a difference in our own world. And I think that's really what people bring to the table. I think that's what students right now bring to the table. We want to see change because we want to see the world and our industries perform at a higher level, and I think that's what's really important. I want everyone to be gainfully employed, have jobs. That stuff's really important. But I think more important is to be able to share your passion with the world. I think that's something that a lot of times we let take the back burner. So encourage everyone to kind of think about that. So it says, what are employers looking for? And the thing says, innovative companies today don't ask and probably don't care about basic skills, grades, SAT scores. Instead, they want to know if you can brainstorm all the possible uses of bubble wrap. And that might not be an exact example, but people are looking for. They want to see you thinking outside the box. They want to know, everyone knows how to use a program, or a tool the way it's intended to be used. If you go and you say, hey, I have these tools and this skill set and I can use them as is laid out by the manufacturer, that's great. It's important to know how to use them. But again, it's a linear thought process. It's can I go from A to B? Yes, you can go from A to B, especially if you follow the path. So just kind of something to think about, when we have, innovators, we're able to, kind of move in different directions. And I think that's what people are going to be looking for in the job market. So kind of something to think about, is you should master your skill set while you're here. It's incredibly important. Don't for a minute think that I'm saying don't master your tools and your skill set. That's really important. But above and beyond that, what do you bring to the table? So this is where we kind of shift gears a little bit, and we start talking about creativity and creative longevity. I think that everyone. Christian says, I bring the dishes and the food. Nice. I think you'd be surprised. I think food is how I got through some of my education. I got through with bringing food to class. So that was enough for everyone. Obviously, I brought enough to share. But right, creative blocks. What do we do about them? How do we deal with them? How do we move past them? I don't have the answer for everyone. That's the short answer. I think that everyone should take time and think about that, though. Think about how you deal with, address, and overcome creative blocks, because they're going to be there, and it's going to be one of those things that's always going to come back. So brainstorm, play is a huge one. It's a great way to overcome creative blocks. Taking breaks is a lot of times, you can take a break, but if your whole break is spent thinking about how you have this creative block you can't get over, it's not necessarily going to be that helpful. But sometimes kind of getting fully engaged in another thing can really be beneficial and useful. So think about that as you move forward. So we have creative thinking tools as well. Again, I think everyone probably it's kind of a to each their own type of thing. You definitely want to know what works for you and what's most helpful when you're when you're working. When you're working and you find something, you say, oh man, I found out when I listen to this type of music I am able to be more creative. I am able to kind of be more inspired. Or when I eat this type of food, or when I go to this place, you find the places where inspiration strikes you. You figure those things out and remember them. Some of it's going to be a lot of it's going to be trial and error. But I think that it's the kind of stuff that it's worth digging into. It's worth looking at. It's worth saying, okay, what makes me the best I can be? What puts me at my peak? And working within that. Having a play space, kind of if you can carve that. I realize that's a tall order for a lot of people. I think about my house and how much stuff and kids and all this stuff, and for me, my garden is my play space. That's what I enjoy. It's where I go to think and to relax. But right, if you're able to and you have the opportunity, create a space where you can go out and be in your home, in your yard, around. Sometimes it might be a shared space. A shared space. Maybe there's a park you really like. Some people like to be out in nature. Some people don't. Maybe figure out a place for you where you can kind of go and recharge. Though it's important that we have that. Another one to think about is what we call peak performance, and what this really means is what hours of the day are we most productive. This is a place where it's really important to kind of be in tune with ourselves, to know, hey, here's where I'm getting the most done. Here's when I have, I've got the most gains in the work that I'm doing. For me, I know it's early in the morning, kind of in the hours of about 7:30 to 9:30. I'm usually very productive. I'm usually, one or two cups of coffee into the day. I'm feeling pretty good, and I can get a lot of work done if I can take those hours and kind of remove the distractions. And sometimes I'm able to, and sometimes I'm not. Sometimes, the office is, busier, and so sometimes I'm, trying to get work done, but I have, kids I need to take care of, or other things going on. But again, figuring out when you're most productive and being able to utilize that time is really important. Has anyone had that experience where they say, oh, wow, I found I'm really getting a lot done at this time of day? And for a lot of people, it's probably, some people inevitably, it's the middle of the night or very early in the morning. And I think it's mostly just a feature of when your world is quiet. But does anyone have thoughts on that? You want to jump in, chat box, or you can raise your hand? No, okay, fair enough. I have mine in the morning. When I was interesting, okay. When I was younger, it was late at night. I realized that at the end of the day, I was able to kind of quiet everything down and get a lot of work done. I've had a hard time figuring out what my peak performance is. Yeah. Trial and error is kind of the way to do that early. Think early. Yeah. I'd say try working on things early versus, other times of the day. When your brain says it's time, yeah, that's important. So yeah, there's kind of all sorts of times when when that can be going on. Do you when you have time? A lot of times that's what it comes down to. Yeah, it's just, do I have time to do it? Yes. Okay, cool. And that's when we get it done. So yeah, that's definitely a reasonable and understandable thing to do. I just say kind of, work on self-awareness. Think about when we're getting the most done, and go forward with that. Right. I think that peak performance can very easily roll into a flow state, which is important. Sure, everyone's been through the conversations on flow, but again, peak performance is really can be linked into that. So schedules and balance. Everyone's been using the schedule, I imagine. I've been getting a bunch of schedules, so I've been getting them sent to me. How are those going for all of you? Yes. Jillian, looks like your yes is I'm going to assume, an energetic and excited yes. You've enjoyed using the schedule. It's been interesting for you. How's everybody feeling? Awesomeness? Okay. Mel, awesomeness. Good. I'm glad to hear that. Sometimes I use it. Okay, that is an honest answer. I appreciate that. I think that the schedules are really interesting. I absolutely budget my time out. Sometimes I write it down. More often than not, I've not been a actual physical writing down what I'm going to do in each section of the day, because most of that is in my world dictated by what everyone else is doing. My wife and I kind of work opposite hours, so when she's at work, I'm with our kids, and when I'm not there, I'm here at work. So kind of out of my time is I could schedule it, I could write it out and say, here's when I'll be doing X, Y, and Z things, but it normally just kind of figures itself out. It absolutely helps to organize your day. But right, unexpected things can happen. I absolutely do write down and keep a schedule of all my appointments and important things I need to do. Any of my meetings, things I need to go to, I absolutely keep those. So I think that's where I really, really benefit from using a calendar. I like that a lot. So he says, I've been doing great with my weekly schedules. I think it's important to have weekly plans because it really helps get things done. And have time for the rest. Yeah, I agree completely. I couldn't agree with you more. I budget my time out. I plan, I go to the gym 3 days a week. I plan it's the same time every week. So in a lot of ways, I really do have my time already allocated out, and I just in the practice of writing it down. I think the thing, and this is what I always tell my students, so if you've heard this once already, you're going to hear it again. I think it's really important to have goals for the week, even if you think you might not be able to get around to those goals, because inevitably something will happen in the schedule where we find that we have, maybe a gap. Maybe, I was planning on going to do one thing, but the person canceled on me, or those plans fell through. Something happened, and now I've got this gap in my schedule. And if I have a gap in my schedule and I have an extra plan or an extra thing that I want to work on, I can easily just slide that new thing into my schedule and say, oh, well, I found time. Now I can work on this thing. Versus if I've, just said, oh, well, here now I'm just going to have to sit quietly for an hour because this plan fell through. So yeah, and similarly, right, things come up and you can't get to as much as you want to, put the least important thing on to the next day. That's a reasonable way to go through things. I think a lot of times we get wrapped up in our head that if we don't get everything done on our schedule for the day, it's a failure. And it's one of those things where I'd really tell people, I'd say, hey, if you get to them all, great. And if you don't get to them all, there's always tomorrow. We're never running out of time. When we need to get things done, I think it's important to prioritize things based on when they need to be done, which I would definitely encourage people to do. I know when I was in school, I would turn my work in early, just so I didn't have to think about it anymore. Just because, yep, eat the frog, exactly. I would say, hey, you know what? I'm going to be anxious and overanalyze this and worry about it and think about it forever. So let's just get it done and submit it, because in my day, we were allowed one submission. I'd make my one submission, I'd turn it in, and I'd be over it and say, all right, there you go. It's out of my hands now. I can't do anything about it, even if I want to. And it was easy to just let go of it and say, okay, well, I'm done now. So that's how I did stuff when I was in school, especially, and I think it was pretty helpful. So again, finding balance is pretty key. I'm sure everyone has or is or would like to be batching their time. Kind of working to get things done in batches. I know I have a friend who is he does weightlifting, bodybuilding. I'm sorry. So he's a bodybuilder. So he posts his pictures. Every once a week he'll go and he'll make all of his meals for the week, and he'll just put them all together. Because he doesn't really want to cook every day. So he just says, okay, at the beginning of the week, I'm going to make, I'm going to portion out these meals. I'll make them. I'll set them in my fridge, and then I can go through and I can just eat my meal every day. I don't really have to think about it. And some people would say, oh, well, I don't necessarily want to eat the same stuff all week. And for him, he just says, I'm okay to eat the same stuff every week. I'm more concerned about my the calories and what I'm how many calories, carbs, protein, whatever that I'm taking in. And less concerned about, the variety of what I'm eating. So, for him, that's a great way to do time batching. Similarly, I think that cleaning is one of those things that's easily a time batching thing. Is if you already have the cleaning supplies out, it's not that much more difficult to clean, all your surfaces instead of, just one, kind of one of those things. When I lived in a house that had 2 bathrooms, I'd always clean both bathrooms at the same time, because I thought, there's no sense in cleaning just one bathroom. I already have the supplies out. I'll just take everything and I'll go, I'll clean the sink in one bathroom, and then I'll clean the sink in the other bathroom, and then, move on through the bathroom, and, kind of get everything clean and be done with it, and not have to take the supplies out again. So time batching kind of fits its way into our lives. Where you want it, where you use it, where it's helpful. I think that it for a lot of us just kind of naturally occurs. Some people, maybe it's revelatory. They say, oh wow, I never thought about this. I hope that it's useful. I hope that you find a way to use that if you aren't already. So what do we think about the other parts of the schedule? I think that work is it's the big part of the schedule that everyone's always like, yeah, I need school and my job, and school and my job. And those are the things that are really important. I agree. They are. You need a job, keep a roof over your head. School is really important because it'll help you get a better job, and you can have a better roof over your head. I'm just joking. I think that those are the 2 big ones that people really tend to focus on. What do you think about the other categories? How do we feel about play, fit, and push? Are those things, I'm sure play is it's popular. It's a popular category. I never heard anyone says, occasionally I have people say, I don't like to play, and we talk about their play mindset, and sometimes they change their mind. Does anyone have any thoughts on those? What category did you most enjoy, or what did you think you were going to enjoy more or less than you actually did? Chris says they're all very important. I agree. I think they're all really important. Definitely, play is fun. There's no arguments around that. I think that how we view play is also a really interesting one. I think that, a lot of times I'll get people who are, maybe closer to my age. I'm in my mid 30s. So play for me looks way different than I think play looked for me when I was 18, 19, 20. When I was that age, I was like video games and, going out and having fun with my friends. And now I'm like, oh, right, hanging out with my kids and doing stuff in the garden. Because it's definitely different stuff, but play, I think, is just as important now as it was then. Oh, you enjoyed play, but you had difficulties with push. So you get hung up with work, fit, and play. I get that. I think that's, push is where I'd say is those things that it's like a stretch goal. It's like I hate to refer to everything back to like I think about gamification and game speak, but like you have those like those extra achievements in games that doesn't really affect like you win the game either way, but you have those extra achievements you want to unlock. Things like that. Christian says, once I get the idea of balancing all of them together and making a habit of it, it will be overall successful, happy, and living a low stress life. Awesome. That's great. Yeah, I think finding balance is really the thing. It says push did help me a lot. Helped me keep a pact with myself to get whatever was chosen done. Awesome. That's great to hear. Struggle with fit, but all the other categories I did well in. It's understandable. And I always tell people, when we look at the fit category, it's always a tricky one because a lot of times people will think about it just in terms of physical fitness. I think that our emotional, mental, spiritual, all those other types of fitness are just as important. You can be, a big, bulky, heavy, bodybuilder type person. But if you're not spiritually fit, if you're not mentally fit, if you're not, emotionally well, you can very easily just be a shell and just have that be your main focus in life. So I'd say that, it's a balance. It's about achieving balance is really what I'd say. I think that what we go through and continue to talk about with mindfulness and meditation are practices worth engaging in, and I think are definitely things that people will benefit from, as they move forward. Um, you know, it says make a play plan, but I would say make a plan for everything. Think about, each day, kind of what's something you can do. And I realized that after my class, a lot of people won't keep a schedule, and that's fine. I'm I'm okay with it. But I'd encourage you to kind of just think about at least one goal for each category each day. Just like, all right, what's some stuff that needs to get done at work or with school? What's something fun I can incorporate? How can I incorporate a little bit more fun into my day? We don't need to slam on the brakes and say, stop, it's 5 o'clock, time to have fun. But we could say, hey, you know what? I'm doing this, I'm watching, a video for class. After I watch this video for class and maybe answer some questions, maybe I'm going to watch a different video from, a content creator or a YouTuber I really like. Just kind of like work some fun into what we're already doing. Hopefully you don't fall down the rabbit hole on YouTube. But I think it's better to make play fit our schedule, and work it in where we can. Makes a great desktop wallpaper and personalized. Yeah, there you go. We talk a little bit about multitasking. There was a period of time where we'd talk about it a little bit more. There's a video, but I can effectively summarize what happens in this slide when we multitask. What we think we're doing is getting a lot of stuff done. And what actually ends up happening when we attempt to multitask is what's called multi-switching. So we have to keep moving back and forth from, one task to the next task, and we feel very busy. The feeling of busyness sometimes in our mind, translates into the idea of productivity, because our mind is very busy, it's occupied. We think we're being productive. We feel like we're expending a lot of mental energy, switching back and forth between things. But what ends up happening is we don't end up doing a very good job at any of the things that we're switching in between. it doesn't work out very well is the short answer to multitasking. If you need more proof, I could go find this video and show it, but I realized this is a video heavy segment, so I didn't want to go through it with everyone, but that's the gist of the video. We end up switching a lot. We end up not really being that productive with what we're doing, and it's really not the best use of our time. So just kind of something to think about, something to keep in mind. The 20-minute rule is a great way to overcome that, and what that basically is saying, hey, I'm gonna give 20 minutes to a task. After that is done, I'm going to hang it up and be done with it. So if we absolutely have to switch back and forth between tasks, that's how we'd go about doing it. We'd work on a task for 20 minutes. After the 20 minutes is up, we move on and go on to the next thing. Mindfulness is another topic that comes up. I think mindfulness is pretty interesting practice to engage in, and I'd encourage everyone who, if you aren't engaging in it and you aren't thinking about it, it's worth doing. I do have a video on mindfulness that I would encourage everyone to take a minute and watch. It is in the materials section. You can click on it, and I'll come back at the end. Alrighty, I hope everybody enjoyed that. I really like that video. I think it's a pretty good example of what we're going through with mindfulness. Kind of the ideas of being in the moment. Yeah, you can absolutely make a suggestion about mindfulness. I would be happy to hear it. Yeah, no, the animation is super fun. It's a really fun video. That's a lot of why we pick it. But right, it's again, it's about self understanding and self awareness. Those things are really what are the drivers behind mindfulness. So I'd encourage everyone to, take some time, think about mindfulness, think about how you can incorporate more of that into your life. If meditative practices are helpful and beneficial to you, please engage in them. It's about making people more productive overall in the long run of their lives. Um, a pretty natural segue. Thanks for sharing that, Mel. I'll definitely go check that out. The anatomy of an emotion. So this happens on a fairly regular basis in people's lives, whether or not they realize it. But something will happen. We have the letter A, activating event. Something happens in our lives. I, for examples, can say, my friends, it was their birthday and they had a party, and I realized that they were having a party, but I didn't get invited. And that's what happens. After that, we have the B. I develop a belief system about that. I say, oh man, my friends must not like me. I guess I'm not fun. I don't know. I'm not likable. They must not think I'm cool. They must not think I'm handsome. They must not think I'm, whatever. But right. Yeah, no, beliefs are definitely, we overthink them. Our beliefs are almost always in these situations centered around our insecurities. So we start going on these beliefs and we think people don't like us because of something likely that we're insecure about. We move forward with our lives, treating those beliefs like they're real. We have the consequence of those beliefs are we might distance ourselves from our friends. We might start to be a little bit less outgoing because we say, oh man, people don't really like me that much. I'm not popular. I didn't get invited to a party. Whatever happened. you know and a lot of times that's where we stop. A lot of people just say, hey, that's it. I can't, that's my life. This is who I am now. I think that the D and E part of this model are absolutely life-changing. Disputation. So you dispute the belief that we came up with. You challenge the irrational thought process that you had. You say, hey, you know what? I don't know why this happened, but it happened, and I don't know. How am I going to move forward with my life? How, I can't think that, if the world, do people really feel this way about me? Is this something that's going on? And it's pretty likely that, we have positive people in our lives, but we tend not to always listen to them. It's kind of one of those things that's unfortunate. We a lot of times listen to, our critics before we listen to our fans. I have I have this when I read like student reviews, critiques and stuff. I'll read through them and I'll have almost every one of my students says, oh, this was great. We really, enjoyed your class. And I'll have one student says, oh, I didn't like your class and you're a jerk. And I'll sit there and I'll stop and I'll say, oh man, was I really a jerk? And then I have to realize this is just one person's idea. And maybe they're having a bad day. I can't take one person's criticisms and weigh that heavier than all the people who were happy with me and who enjoyed my class and who liked doing what we were doing in class. Because it's just, but right, we have a tendency to put more weight on negative opinions than we do positive ones. At the end of this, we should really leave energized. I'd like to think in the original scenario where we didn't get invited to the party, a few days after we realized it, an invitation shows up and we just had gotten lost in the mail. Which I'm sure people have had that happen before, where we think something's happened and we've developed a story, and what happened is we just didn't have a full view. We didn't have a complete perspective. But we kind of moved through our life thinking it was, things were a certain way. But in reality, it just, kind of, we didn't know what was going on. So hopefully everyone is able to leave these situations energized. the outcome after disputing their rational beliefs is that they feel good and better about the situation overall. So kind of looking over everything, I think that mindfulness practices go hand in hand with our emotions, the anatomy of emotion, how that also all linked together. It takes practice. That's really the key. It takes working at it. It takes, it's a lot of times it's having to walk through the process. I'd encourage everyone. It's, this is probably in the readings, but going through the anatomy of emotion with you, if you have an issue, so you have something come up, you say, "Oh man, I feel awful. This thing happened. I'm upset," etc. Walk through that and just say, "Hey, is this realistic? Does this make sense? Is this what's really happening?" And just kind of take some time and think about that. Does anyone have any questions? Any questions at all? I think I may have lost my connection with everyone, so my apologies.